to grab, okay, got it. To grab some pen and paper, to grab a notebook so you can actually do these exercises together. We will have some minutes of chunks of time where you'll be able to fill this out. I very strongly encourage you to do so because, well, for a lot of reasons. One is that it's helpful to kind of get clarity on these things for ourselves. Right now, because we are in this global pandemic, a lot of us are not engaging in the kind of sex that we would like to have as much as we would like to have. And as much as that is a bummer, I, for instance, do not recommend coming out with a book about casual sex during a global pandemic. But what it's offering us is this opportunity to get really clear for ourselves about what we want from our sex lives moving forward. This is this kind of forced introspection time where we may not be able to interact with people in the ways that we want to, but we're able to kind of get a little bit more clarity about what we would like from those interactions moving forward. So I encourage you to externalize it for those reasons. I also encourage you to take these notes because sometimes it's really nice to be able to reflect backwards. Again, journaling is a wonderful technique for all sorts of people at all sorts of stages in their lives. So I encourage you to actually write this stuff down so that you can actually revisit these things and maybe adjust as you find that you're maybe done things that you don't want to do anymore, or you thought you would want something and maybe you'd like to adjust that in the future. I think it's really helpful to have those abilities to look back and to reflect. Most importantly, though, one of the reasons why I encourage you to write this stuff down, or at the very least say this stuff out loud, is it's important to learn how to externalize our desires. A lot of times when we engage in sex with people, we want them to read our minds. We want them to just know what we want. And so we get into this, oftentimes we get into this state of not asking for what we want and then getting mad when they just don't give it to us. It is our job to tell our partners what we want when it comes to emotions, when it comes to pleasure, when it comes to touch, when it comes to sexual acts. We have to externalize this stuff. We have to use our words to express what we want, because otherwise the person or the people that we're with can't give it to us. And I think it's my big MO, my reason for doing sex ed is to encourage people to speak up on behalf of their pleasure more. I think one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest detriments or hurdles with a lot of us experiencing the sex that we want is being unwilling or ashamed or just shy around talking about what we want. And again, a lot of us are just, we want to be good lovers. We want to give the people that we're in bed with what they want, but we can't do that unless we know what it is. So to the degree you can, practice doing this stuff with yourself. If you can't tell yourself the things that you want, how can you expect to tell partners, right? That little notification that maybe some of you guys got is that BraTopia is recording this class. So if you do not want your video shown, you can turn off your video. I will not be offended. There will be opportunities where you can ask questions. If you want to ask questions verbally and be on the recording, that's fine with me. If you would prefer, though, to ask questions in the chat so that no one will see or no one will hear your name or see your face in the video in the future, that is great. I will be checking the chat, and the BraTopia crew will be checking the chat periodically, and they will be able to kind of either ping me with questions, or I will be able to check those questions. If you have questions come up as I'm teaching, you may notice I tend to speak fairly quickly when I teach. If you have any sort of questions that come up, feel free to just add it to the chat. And again, we'll go back through when there are appropriate times to ask questions. So that might be a fine thing for you to do, like, hey, I didn't understand that word, or could you repeat that concept? I didn't quite get it. That's all fine with me. You can also raise your hand or even just unmute yourself. And actually, if we'd like to practice this right now, you can unmute yourself but just by pressing the space bar if you're on a computer. Basically, you just hold down the space bar and then you can speak, and then you can release the space bar and then you'll be muted again. So if you would all like to practice that right now, you can unmute yourself and just say hi into the room and, you know, say something like, hello. Perfect. Yes, love it. Good. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, I see more mutes. Anyone else want to unmute?
Hey, everyone.
Lovely.
Happy Wednesday.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else? This is your opportunity to make your voice known. Okay, great. So now you know how to unmute yourself. Feel free to do that. It might not be great while I'm talking because I might not hear you, but I'll stop at certain moments when I'm moving from slide to slide, and you'll have an opportunity then. Cool. We will also take a couple of short breaks, again, for people to either work on their worksheets or to take a bio break or do whatever you need to do. Most of you are in your homes, so I do not expect you to have, I do not expect to have your undivided attention the entire time, such it is with this technology, and that's fine with me. So yeah, that's pretty much the intro. In terms of this workshop specifically, oh, by the way, also please mute yourself again if you unmuted yourself, just to make sure, because we can hear some background noise. Let's see here. So let me just check my notes. Blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, this is also a reason why I teach my workshops. I am here to try and help shorten your learning curve. I'm not here to tell you what kind of life you should be living, what kind of sex you should be having, or what kind of sex you should even want. My job is to give you some tools so that you can figure that out for yourself and get better at it faster. So to that end, I encourage you to not beat yourself up. If I say things that you didn't think about before, if I introduce concepts that you really had never thought about before, I'm not here so that I can encourage you into a shame spiral. That doesn't help anybody, least of which you, right? So what I'm here to do is help you get tools so you can get better at this stuff. A lot of us have had sex lives before we came into this workshop, and some of those choices we made may have been bad choices. Some of those choices may have been amazing choices, but we all come into sex and into a workshop like this with our own set of baggage. And so my job is just to help you kind of figure out how to sort through that and get better at it in the future. So wherever you are on that journey is A-okay. The fact that you're here means so much for who you can be and what kind of life you can choose for yourself. Whew. All right, so that is the intro. One thing that this workshop is not, I'm not going to give you the cheat codes to get into somebody's pants. I cannot do that. I don't do that. My book doesn't do that. That's not the kind of educator I am. And honestly, people who try and sell those things are usually lying. There is no one way to convince specific people to bone you. That's not how this stuff works. So I'm not going to teach that. I'm going to teach you how to be better with yourself so that you can lead with the stuff that you are and attract people who are into the you that you are. And that's really my goal. Okay, so that's me. I would love to know why you're here. So again, you can add to the chat, like, what about this workshop interested you? If it was just because you wanted to win a free bra set, that's totally fine, and I will not be offended. But however, if you actually have specific things that you want to learn, I will try and integrate those things into the lessons if they're not already there. So open up the chat, it's at the bottom of your window, and just kind of add it to the whole main thing. You can send me direct messages too if you'd prefer not to share it to everybody, but it's nice to sometimes see what other people are interested in and why they're here, because it might help kind of give you some ideas as well. So I'm going to give you a second. Even if you're just like, I have no idea, just tell me where you're from and say hi, and that will make me feel like at least I'm not speaking into the void, and that's great. So open up that chat, tell me why you're here, and I will have a sip of my tea. Oh, there we go. Awesome. All right. Want to be here because the idea of it makes me very uncomfortable. Awesome. That is so cool that you're here. I love that, stepping into the discomfort. That's beautiful. I'm here because Colette said you're great. Well, thank you. That's very sweet, Colette. Please discuss hookups with older adults, 50 plus and beyond. I will do my best to integrate that stuff. Thank you very much. My partner is in his mid 50s. And although I am not, I definitely have experience working with that. So thank you. Here to learn how to express my desires better. Excellent. Recently became a widow and have no clue how to be out there anymore. Totally understand. That is a lot. Widowed for 5 years, married for 52. Yep. So not sure what's next. Very valid. Actually, that's something I also talk about a lot in my book. This is something, as you're writing, keep writing. This is something that is like, this is a workshop that's 90 minutes. My book is 380 pages long, or 300 pages long. So there's going to be a lot more stuff in the book than there is in this workshop. There are some things that I will not be able to address. But if you want to go deeper into things like, you know, how to apologize or how to actually navigate like the intricacies of STIs, there's a lot more information in that. So that's just a secondary resource. And it's available as an audiobook as well. All right, let me scroll back up because I missed some people. Looking for most up-to-date info on sex and datings. 3 years into a high-demand religion deconstruction and learning about life. Oof, that is a big, big goal and big, big, beautiful project that you're on. So congratulations. Figure out if emotional connection and sex have always been strongly linked. How do you get what you need in both a physical and emotional way? Awesome. Learn about relationships more. Great. This event came up in a time when I'm thinking about getting back into dating, sex, and relationships after extended time single and not having any sex. And how to stop the judgment in my head that says casual sex is promiscuous and will give you diseases. Oh, that's such a good one. Cool. Let's see here. I have no idea how to improve my sexual life being single for a long time. Okay, great. Anyone else, feel free to add your notes. And again, if there's something that comes up as I keep talking, this is great. But oh my goodness, thank you for sharing all of this stuff. This is all wonderful. I think what's I'm noticing from a lot of it is that there are some people who might have just be kind of starting this journey for themselves, either maybe restarting it after, again, having been married for a while, or just being single for a while and just finding themselves back on this market and feeling that the world is very different. There are things I will talk about briefly around things like internet dating and stuff, but and I can offer resources if you want to actually like learn how to navigate the technology of this all. I'm going to talk more about communication and self-knowledge stuff, which will help you then turn that stuff into things you can externalize via internet dating and stuff as well. Cool. All right, so I'm just going to keep on moving. The first thing is, I think, a really wonderful kind of self-assessment. So this is going to be where you grab your pens or you just keep yourself muted and you speak this stuff out loud. I'm going to share my screen. But the question is, the first thing I want you to really start thinking about for yourself is, why do it? Why have sex, casual sex, hookups at all? There are so many different reasons, and the pleasure of sex is really only one of those reasons. So I'm going to give you a huge list. It's going to be a lot of words. I'm just giving you I'm preparing you now. I'm going to, let's see, share my screen. I'm going to share. Oh, I have to figure out how to do this again. 1 second. Advanced sharing options. Share screen, getting at workshop slides. I think this is right. Did that work? That did not work. Okay, I just had it. Give me 1 second. I am so sorry. I'm sorry, I just heard somebody. What was that?
Me, Lucinda.
Yeah, I'm trying to share just a specific slide. That's what I'm having a problem with. Let's see if I can, maybe the recording changed my ability to do that. Might be able to do, I can do it one at a time maybe, but let me see if there's a better, oh, this might work. No, that's not really it. Let me see. Share screen. Oh. No, I'm on a Mac. I've been able to do this before. Sorry, I just got a message that I could do it this way. Well, let me see if I can do it this way. Sorry, thank you for bearing with me as I could have sworn it worked. I tested it right before everybody joined me and I screwed it up. Okay. See, I don't need to show you my notes. That's what I'm trying to do. Because you guys can all see the notes under this right now, right? That's what I want to make sure.
Yes, we
Yes.
see.
Right. Okay. So that's not what you need to be able to see. Let's see if we can see it this way. Ooh.
Perfect.
This is kind of not it, but I'm kind of okay with it. Let's see if this will work. Yeah, that works, right? Wait, my background's still weird though, right? But you can
No,
see me.
it works
Okay.
fine.
Perfect. Okay, great. So let's just keep doing this as it is. All right. So slide 2 of 9, as you can see. So why do it? This is a long list of things. What I want you to do, I'm going to read through them out loud. You're going to listen, or you can read along with me. And I want you to either write down the ones that work for you or add your own as you think about it. So the easiest thing to do is to really kind of like listen and see how it hits you, right? So, and I say like, so why do it? The thrill of it, the thrill of sexuality. For touch or closeness, to feel touched and close to another human being, to feel sexy, to get adventure in stories, to get over someone, intimacy, the desire to avoid intimacy, stress relief, just real basic, like getting those endorphins going, affirmation of identity, maybe a gender identity or sexual orientation, curiosity. You're just curious about maybe a certain thing, maybe a certain thing that you've read about, a certain sexual act, a certain kind of sex, or a certain kind of person. Lust, just pure animal lust. You're horny and you want to fuck. Escapism, a desire to kind of get out of your head for a little while, to maybe try on a new way of being. Practice, you want to just get good at something. Loneliness, you just really need to feel like you're in the presence of another human being. To prove something, maybe something about who you are or who you can be, to prove something to your friends, to yourself, to fit in. Maybe all of your friends are having a lot of crazy sex and you're like, I need to feel like I can fit in that. To spite your family or maybe a conservative upbringing. To heal something. Sexual healing can be really potent stuff. And you might need to kind of find how you can heal a part of you that's been hurt by sex in the past, or find a way to use sex to heal something else. You want someone specific that's only available for sex. And of course, sex is fun. So consider this list, right? It might not be everything, and it might, your answers might not be on this list, and that's okay. If not, add your own. Think about it. What else could there possibly be that's not on this, that is your reason? And if you have a reason that's not on this list, or if you just want to share the reasons that feel good for you, I would encourage you to add it in the chat. Add what's not here, or add what feels resonating for you. And again, your answers may be multiple things, or you might not know, but it's okay to kind of sit with that and feel into it and see what happens. So take a second, write in the chat, write for yourself, and you'll see what's going on. And I'm going to try and stop chatting, sharing. There we go. Yeah. All right. I'm having some problems with this screen sharing, so please forgive me as I'm trying to go back and forth with my stuff. Okay. So let's see, I'm going to read some of your notes. Please continue to add as we go. To laugh with someone. Yes, I think that is a very valid thing, and that sounds really lovely. It's one of my favorite parts about sexual intimacy. Definitely been in the adventure story stage for a bit. Totally get that. Curiosity, having new experiences, touch and fun. Yes, yes, yes. That all sounds wonderful. Meet a new partner and get to know them and their needs. Oh, that's beautiful. Anyone else? Anything else that you want to add? Being desired, exploring what I have to offer. Beautiful. Yes. Anyone else? Yes, touch, closeness, stress relief, and connection. Beautiful. All right, last chance if you want to add some more. Reveal my vulnerability. Woof, that is powerful magic right there. I love that. Thank you. All right. I'm trying to think. Let's see here. I wanted to see if I can try one more time to get my screen sharing the way I want it. So give me one moment, please. I think I found it. There we go. That's what I was looking for. That makes me so happy. Okay, so let's see if I can make this make more sense now. So here I am in front of this big slide. I think everybody can see this now. This is what I was going for because it's super cool looking and it allows me to actually still look at you while we talk. Okay, so in those things that I shared, in the things that other people shared, you might have found things that either were like real strong yeses or real strong nos. And the reason why I asked you to do this in the first place is because a lot of times people have less effective experience or less like positive experiences from engaging with sex. And oftentimes it's because they don't know what they're looking for when they get into it in the first place. And again, it kind of goes back to like, what are we actually asking for? But if you know what you're looking for, you can help kind of steer your ship in that direction. So again, if you're looking to just kind of like, I don't know, like practice something, that you can make specific requests from your partners about like, hey, I saw this technique in this porno that I watched once, and I was really curious if you wanted to try it together, right? It'll just improve your odds of getting the results that you want. Similarly, if you are brutally honest with yourself and you find that maybe some of the reasons are less evolved or maybe feel less healthy to you, that's good information, right? If you feel like you are engaging in casual sex just to prove to somebody you can do it, well, you can maybe try it and then take it off the list if it doesn't give you what you're looking for. This is also similar if you're kind of playing with sex to spite someone or to kind of make someone jealous. Maybe again, these things that may give you results, but they might not be the results that actually feel fulfilling. So again, I consider this all information, right? This is good stuff for you to know about yourself. And if you find that like, hey, I did the thing, I got the story that I wanted, and I kind of don't want to do it again, that is, in my world, a win. Learning what kind of sex you don't want is just as important as learning what kind of sex you do. Actually, maybe in some ways more important, because it helps you kind of narrow your field and narrow your aperture so you can actually look for what you really want. And sometimes it might mean that if you're looking for sex to do something, you might also find that there are other things in your life that you can do this with. For instance, like exercise or artistic expressions, right? Might be ways for you to get those itches scratched that aren't necessarily about having sex. So just think about that for yourself as well. If you think that sex is the only way to get something, it might be useful for you to start to really think about what else is out there. But again, if this list or anyone else's list gave you ideas, I think it's really helpful. Great. All right, I saw a couple direct messages come in. I'm going to address those later. So just so you know, I did see them, but I'm going to take a beat now. We're going to go to the next slide, and then we can ask some more general questions in a second. Okay, next slide. Reflections. Now, this is a really fun one I like. I'm going to split my video. There we go. Okay, so reflections. The question is, these are questions that I want you to really think about for yourself. And again, this is where you're going to have some time to write. I'm probably not going to give you enough time to answer these questions as fully as you would like, but this is why I want you to be able to do this later. Again, I've got the PDFs. BraTopia has them as well. Afterwards, they might be able to either email them to you, or again, you could also email me and I will send these PDFs to you directly if you would like it that way. So, so you'll be able to answer these questions with the slides however you'd like to, but again, write these down now. So let's think about this a little bit. Let's reflect on our sex lives up until this point. If you don't have much of a sexual history, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Just kind of think about maybe some intimacy, some touch, some dating experiences that might feel like they get you closer to understanding these things. But if you do have a sex life to think about, again, try and be brutally honest with yourself about what worked for you and what didn't, because this is going to be gold moving forward. All right, so I'm gonna ask these questions aloud and say, first, answer the question, what have I liked most about my sex life so far? So go ahead and write that down. I'm going to give some moments between each one. What have I liked most about my sex life so far? What have I not liked? What do I want more of? And what do I want less of? What has sex taught me about my body and desires so far? That's a big one, and it's totally okay if there's a lot there. Just get started a little bit on that. And what would I improve upon? That one's a big one. Let's dream. I'm going to give you like 2 or 3 minutes to just write these answers, finish them up. If you need to take a bathroom break or grab some tea, by all means do. And then we'll go through this in just a second. So take your time, write these right answers down. And if you would like to share any answers that are exciting to you or any moments of aha that you have in the comment section so that we can see them and learn from them as well. Think about 1 more minute. Okay, we are back. How was that for everyone? That's a lot of big thinking already. And I know that that's a lot. And this is why I'm encouraging you to do some thinking after the session is over. I'd love for you, if you have thoughts or if anything, if you had any aha moments from any of those answers to your questions, to add them to the chat. Again, this is really about building community so we can learn from one another as much as what you're learning from me. So what kind of aha moments did you have? What has worked well for you in the past? What did you not like? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? Anything that kind of came to mind, add that to the chat so we can kind of learn from it. But we're going to keep moving because we don't have a whole lot of time and I want to be able to get through all of this stuff. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to share the screen now that I know how to do it. And we're going to move on to the next one. And this one is my particular favorite. So let me prepare the slides. Okay. All right, next up, and this is again, fill in the blank, write your own answers. It is your ideal sex life, right? What kind of relationships do I want with my sex partners or sex partner? Do you want to be friends with benefits? Do you want to have a polypod where everyone's romantically and sexually involved with one another? Do you want a kind of a family unit situation where you have maybe like a more polyamorous kind of open quad or open triad kind of vibe? Do you want your sex partners to be truly anonymous and fleeting? You kind of never see each other again outside of maybe a sex club or a dungeon. There are so many different ways to structure your life. What kind of relationships do you want to have with your sex partners? What kind of sex do I want to have, right? We have this notion, especially in our Western society, that sex is kind of looks like one thing all the time. But what kind of sex? Do you want to have a lot of really like kinky sex? Do you want to have a lot of exploratory learning sex where you try new things, buy new toys, go to have new experiences? Do you want really romantic, loving sex? Do you want sex only with committed life partners? Do you want anonymous backroom hookup sex? What kind of sex do I want to have? What about this fantasy excites me? What about the relationships you're pondering and the kind of sex? What about it excites you? What does it mean to you to have this fantasy or to contemplate living a life in which this is your reality? What concerns or fears does this fantasy pique? We've already heard some people share some of their concerns or fears. So what fears do you have that this fantasy kind of stirs up in you? And finally, what curiosities does this fantasy arouse? What questions does it bring up? What do you think you need to learn more about in order to be able to pursue this? Again, your answers are going to be your own. Take some time. We're going to give you another 2 to 3 minutes to just keep on fleshing out these questions. I did see a question in the chat asking if this recording will be available, BraTopia. So for people who have to leave early, are they going to be able to finish watching this workshop? You can either answer in the chat or just unmute yourself and let us know. Yes, it will be. Okay, great. So for people who need to leave early, you will be able to watch this recording after the session. Thank you for that answer. Perfect. All right, keep answering these ideal sex life questions and I will be back to you in just a couple minutes. And again, if you have any aha moments or things you'd like to share with the group, please add them to the chat. If you have any questions you want to send to me directly, you can DM me in the chat as well. Take another minute, answer what you can answer, add things to the chat if you'd like to share. All right, bring it back here. I hope that this was a useful exercise. I hope you had some realizations or at least came up with some answers that are worth exploring a little bit further. Again, I'm not giving you nearly enough time to answer these questions, but I hope that you will be able to address the stuff as we go. Okay, so I got one DM that I just wanted to share briefly. Somebody had an aha moment of saying that when I picture a committed relationship, I feel limited and like I need to hide my true desires. And because they were conditioned with vanilla monogamy, and I still have that connection in my mind. That is a really big one. And I love that you shared that with me. Thank you for sharing it with me. I think that oftentimes we have this notion that we can have crazy, fun, kinky, wild sex with hookups, but our spouse or our primary partner is where you have to have like the deep emotional connection and maybe the stuff that you're not allowed to be as wild with, right? Maybe you have to hide things because you're afraid of being judged by the person that you're going to see every day. I think that is a really valid concern. And I think this is actually when we think of some unethical things like around cheating, often we see it because there's this freedom that we envision possible with people we will never see again, or people that we only see for sex that we don't have with our primary partners. And I would encourage you to think about that and maybe interrogate that for yourself. If you have that anxiety for yourself, to think about what assumptions you're bringing into just the notion of monogamy or the notion of partnership, that may be something that you can either let go of or deconstruct a little bit, so that you can have a better relationship. And it also might be something that maybe you're not giving your partner or partners enough credit for, right? You might be hiding some things from them out of fear. I have a personal anecdote I can share here. I, for a very long time, used to hide that I smoked weed from my partners. I don't know where it came from. I just think that I thought that if they knew that I smoked weed, they would think I was some idiot stoner or something. And I didn't want them to think less of me. And I remember I used to like sneak into the bathroom while my partner was asleep to smoke. And once I just shared that with my partner that I was seeing. We'd only been seeing each other for about 6 months, and he didn't have any idea why I would be offended by it. I think often because I would sleep with people who didn't smoke weed themselves. And so I had these stereotypes in my mind. It's a very mild thing, but it was definitely something that I led with. I didn't give my partners the opportunity to say yes or no to whether they wanted to know something about me. I just assumed for them. I made the decision for them that they didn't get to know this thing about me. And that was to my detriment. That was something that I basically didn't give my partners enough credit for handling about me. So there might be something in your life that is like that you are not giving your partners enough credit for. You're hiding something that they do not need to have hidden from them for whatever reason. So if that's something you're thinking about or interrogating, that might be worth, deconstructing for yourself and considering coming out a little bit about what your desires are. My partner often says this, it's the thing that you are most afraid that you will, the thing that you feel like you cannot be loved for, that is the thing that your partner deserves to know about you, right? If you are so afraid that if you revealed this thing, that they would leave you, well, by revealing it, you are having a real relationship. You are being honest with your partner about who you are and what you want. Now, this might not be a thing for you this might not be a thing you need to reveal for a one-night stand, right? There are things that we are allowed to withhold for all sorts of reasons, and I'm not saying that we need to experience radical transparency with every human being we see and date, but I do think that once we are or in agreement that we want to be intimate and vulnerable with somebody, I think it helps us to give them the credit for being able to handle difficult information. And again, this is where you're building a foundation of love and trust so that you can continue to see them and can continue to reveal yourself to them. And this is particularly true when it comes to sexual stuff. A lot of us will have so much shame around specific kinks or specific interests that we will never even give our partner an opportunity to opt into sharing that with us. So if you have something where you are in the closet about this, just consider what it would feel like to reveal it and to be held and loved, not in spite of it, but because of it. Oh, okay, that was a lot. All right, let's see, I'm just going to check the chat, make sure there's nothing else come through. Yeah, it is absolutely true to be vulnerable. And I think one of the things about having, and because this is a class about casual sex, there is a certain amount of element of where we're building into it, like how much are we presenting ourselves fully to someone that we're sleeping with maybe once, or we're just meeting for the first time and then we're sleeping with 2 hours later, right? And I think for me, it's always about leading with the scary stuff. We'll talk about this a little bit when we get down to the actual like interactions with other human beings. But I think leading with the scary stuff is actually really key. For instance, my personal thing, I am non-monogamous, I am polyamorous, I'm queer, and I'm in an open relationship with a cis man. I used to be lesbian identified. And so when I started dating this guy, I was really uncomfortable with the fact that like, I wanted to date other women, but there are a lot of women who don't want to date a woman who's with a man. That's their own choice. That's their own stuff. But I found that it was much better for me to lead with the scary stuff, to say like, hey, I think you're really cute. I'm totally hitting it off with you. And I'm in a primary relationship with a cisgender man. And if that's a problem for you, we shouldn't sleep together. I got rejected for that. But the ones who stuck around were the ones who stuck around. And that's what's really key. Finding people who can love you and appreciate you and have fun sex with you, not in spite of who you are, but because of who you are. Those are the quality people you want in your life. So lead with some of the scary stuff. If you have herpes, if you have a kid, if you haven't been with another human being other than your spouse in 40 years, this is stuff that's really helpful to lead with. And it can feel terrifying, but these are the people who are okay with that are the ones you're going to want to be sexual with in the first place. And this is actually kind of a nice segue, because we're going to now start talking about how to talk about ourselves with other people. Okay, so I'll take a quick break, I'll take a sip of my tea, and then we're going to move on. If you have any other questions or anything that's coming up, feel free to add to the chat. So as we move on, I will be able to address those things. All right. All right. Sexual empowerment. I almost skipped a step. Okay, this is a really big slide with a lot of stuff. I'm going to get out of your way so you can actually read it better. So sexual empowerment has become, empowerment in general has become a bit of a buzzword. It's like a marketing word right now, right? But empowerment really just means that you have the ability to access information and resources to become a fully self-expressed person, right? So this is another thing where you're just going to either, again, circle these things or write them down. If there's something that I list here that you need work on, write it down, because this is where you're going to have a little bit of homework for yourself. Okay, so I'm going to get out of your way so I'm going to read these out loud and we're going to go over them. Okay, split my video. Okay, sexual empowerment. So these things may be true or false for you. If they are true, congratulations. If they are false, make a note of it, because this is where you're going to need to do a little bit of work on yourself. And this is what will make you strong and powerful going into sex with other people. So true or false, I control my reproduction. I have access to healthcare. In the United States, this is particularly difficult for a lot of us. I have friends I can talk to about sex. No one else tells me when I have to have sex. I can give myself pleasure without a partner. I know resources for sex education. I understand sexually transmitted infections. I can use the protocols, the safer sex protocols that I want to with my partners. I understand basic sexual anatomy. My partners honor my boundaries. I don't need to use drugs or alcohol to enjoy sex. I am as out as I want to be. I can speak up about sex during sex, before and after. I know how to ask for what I want. I have places that I can be myself. I have healthy, non-sexual relationships. I know how to apologize to my partners that I may have hurt. And I am proud of my sex life. This may have kicked up some emotions for you. There may be some things that you feel are not, sorry, there's somebody unmuted. There may be some things that stirred up shame or stirred up sadness or regret. You may be aware that maybe you are in a relationship that's not really good. There's a lot here, basically. What I want you to do is to not use this list as a way to beat yourself up more. This is just an opportunity for you to see where you can do a little bit more work. For instance, if you are frightened about STIs, this is an opportunity for you to think, I can do a little bit more research about STIs, how they're transmitted, how I can protect myself. If you realize that you seek sexual partnership only because you do not feel like you can create sexual pleasure for yourself through masturbation or sensual activities, that's great information for you to potentially get better at that. If you find that you don't really have friends you can talk to candidly about sex, this is an opportunity for you to find more people where you can talk to comfortably about sex, or be out with them, or go to the places where you can feel like you are fully self-expressed in your sexuality or gender identity. Again, do not use this as an opportunity to beat yourself up more. Please use this as an opportunity for you to see what's out there. And if you've got all these things unlocked, that's great. And you can maybe be a beacon for those people in your life who don't feel that comfortable about this stuff. You can maybe encourage your friends who are shy around sexuality to talk a little bit more about what they'd like in their sex lives. You can be that person, and you can be a role model for other people, or you can offer resources. I am that resource offerer. This is how I got into sex ed in the first place. I just had a little bit more comfort with sex than a lot of my peers growing up. So I started becoming the oracle, the resource that my peers came to when they didn't understand what an IUD was, or what hormonal birth control was, or what it meant to be trans or non-binary, right? So this is an opportunity for you to just kind of either learn to be better at this for yourself, or be a resource for people who might need someone like you in their lives. Whew. Okay, that was a big one. Now we're going to take like a minute, write stuff down, go back through your notes if you want to. We take a potty break if you need to, and we'll be back, and we're going to move into, again, how to communicate this stuff with future or current partners. Okay, so take a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, here we are. What I would love for everyone to do right now is to, in the chat, share something that's been useful so far, any aha moments you've had about any of the stuff we've talked about so far, or any lingering questions you have from any of this understanding yourself stuff, so that we can launch into this chunk about interacting with other human beings and feel a little bit more empowered around it. So add to the chat any aha moments you've had, and we want to make sure that you're still present and here with us and enjoying this as a community, and then we will move on. Okay. Anyone? Go. Is it weird that this talk so far has made me want relationship-based sex more than casual sex? No, it is not weird. That is wonderful to learn about oneself. I think that's great. So yes, that is great that if you realize like, hey, I actually want like committed long-term relationships more than I want casual sex, like that's a huge win. So good job. I like actually taking the time to reflect upon what I'm actually looking for. Yes, that is so crucial. That is so important. Again, this is the kind of workshop where people kind of like sometimes get annoyed that I'm not just teaching them how to like build a dating profile, which I totally understand. And at the same time, like you will get better results by building a strong foundation of who you are and what you want, and then using that foundation to go out and experience the world. That's definitely the better way of approaching it, because you will get better results. You will attract higher quality partners and you'll have higher quality interactions. So yes, awesome. Growing up in a house where sex wasn't openly talked about, I'm proud that by your checklist, I'm actually sexually empowered. Yay, good job. Yes, that's great. And again, all of us will have different journeys with this stuff. If you haven't checked all these boxes, that's okay. And again, this is just an opportunity to learn more. But yes, I think a lot of us sometimes have to work harder to overcome our backgrounds of conservatism or maybe religiosity or something that tells us not to enjoy our sex life or to enjoy our bodies. So if you are from one of those backgrounds, to do any work on yourself to get to this point where you're actually contemplating sex for pleasure and sex for joy is huge and wonderful. And I congratulate you. I'm more sexually empowered than I realized. Yay! And again, this is where you can be that beacon for the people in your lives. I may not have the sex life that I want, but I do make time for self-pleasure and knowing what I want and don't. Awesome. That's huge. I love that. Yes, absolutely. And I think this is also really important to think about too, when we think about like being with other people. We have this notion that everybody has a better sex life than we do, or everyone's getting sex all the time with all the people. And that's just not true. I get rejected all the time. And I've definitely gotten my heart broken recently by a number of people. And that's okay. And that's just part of the gig, right? We're not about moving people around like video game characters and making them do things for us and to us. We're about offering invitations and seeing who takes that invitation and says yes. And that's really, it's in some ways it's a numbers game. In some ways it's just being out there and being willing to get rejected. Again, like I'm a writer. I know like if you're not being rejected, you're not actually submitting to as many things as you should be. That's kind of a maxim in the writing world. And so if you're not getting rejected, you might not be getting out there as much as you want to. And that's a good thing to know and keep in mind. All right, all the material has been so useful, empowering, so many things to think about and ask myself questions, yay! And a big thank you to everyone for being so open. Yes, I absolutely agree. Thank you for sharing that. I agree. It's great that everyone's being so sharing. I think I need more sexual empowerment and confidence to experience my desires. Yes, totally. My family wasn't really open about talking about sex. I did just getting a lot of sex when I was in middle school. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge thing. I mean, sex ed in the West is terrible in a lot of ways. And sex in school is something that we just often don't get, even the practicalities of it. I went to an abstinence only school. So it was, you know, save yourself for marriage, which as a queer kid meant that saved myself for nothing ever, because marriage wasn't legal for queer people up until fairly recently in the United States. So I think that, yeah, this idea of like, you know, we're supposed to save ourselves, or we're supposed to not have any information. The less information we have, the more empowered we're supposed to be somehow. And that's just not true. So it's okay. And you're in the same boat with a lot of people. Okay, my goodness. Well, we should keep moving on because we have a little bit more to do, and I want to get to all of your questions. Again, I've had a couple of people reach out with DMs with kind of very specific questions. So if there's specific questions, we have time at the end, I will absolutely address them. I don't mind going over and sticking around a little bit more to make sure that your questions are asked or are answered. So feel free to DM me if you'd like to. Okay, let's move on to kind of externalizing this stuff even further. This is one of my favorite modules that I've ever created. It's in Girl Sex 101. And I think it's really essential for everyone. And this kind of is where we get down to like the brass tacks about who we are and what we want. I call it U101. This is just a really simple fill in the blanks, but this is actually incredibly helpful and will be really helpful going forward for your sex life. So real simple, write it down. My pronouns are blank. Are you a she, her? Are you a they, them? Are you a he, him? Are you a ze, zer? There's so many pronouns. Which ones are yours? And if they change, what context do they change in? I like my genitals to be called blank. If you are a biological textbook only person, great. If you like the words yoni and lingam, if you like the words pussy or honeypot or prick or dick or cock, what do you like your genitals to be called? Here are other words I like being called. I really enjoy this question because you might be surprised about how many women hate being called lady. Sometimes you might not think about it, but a lot of people in my life hate being called lady. Are you one of them? Do you like being called daddy or sir or ma'am or goddess? Here are words I like being called. Here are words I don't like being called. If you are one of those people who doesn't like being called lady, write that down. Or daddy. My partner hates being called daddy. It definitely takes the wind out of his sails, but a lot of people do it and then he has to correct them. So here are words that I don't like being called. Here are my no zones. No zones are places on your body that you don't like being touched. So it might be, for instance, your feet. If you are one of those people who, if somebody tries to suck on your toes during sex, you will kick them in the face, either intentionally or unintentionally, that's a no zone. If you, for instance, don't like being choked, but you're okay with having somebody kiss your neck, that's good information as well. These are the things that I do not want touched wise. This is my STI status. If you don't know, that's okay. But I encourage you to get good at talking about this stuff because this becomes really relevant when you start to have sex with new people, or even just when you are able to have kind of conversations with your current partners. This is my relationship status. Are you single and ready to mingle? Are you in a partnership, but you're open? Are you in a partnership, but you're cheating? What is your relationship status? And here's a turn on. Anything that just you find like as a turn on for you, and a turn off. And then anything else. So again, you might have really obvious answers right away for some of the stuff, but some of the stuff might be kind of harder for you to figure out. And again, that's just good information. You might think, I don't know my STI status. I should probably get tested. It's been a while, right? But there should be, this stuff is, I think, about like your pre-flight checklist. This is the basic stuff that a partner needs to know about you to win with you in bed, right? This is particularly true, for instance, if like them calling your genitals by something will misgender you or make you feel absolutely shitty about yourself. Giving them the opportunity to not make that mistake ahead of time is great. So having this stuff up front is really good. I like to have this conversation when I'm about to have sex with somebody new, just kind of go over it, right? Some of the stuff they might know already, like my pronouns, but some of it they might. So this is kind of like the Cliff Notes version of how to win with you. And it can be really easy. I'm going to go through it real fast for myself, so just see how it can be, right? My pronouns are she, her. I like my genitals to be called cunt. Pussy's fine. I don't like my genitals to be called kind of more cutesy words like honey pop or something like that. Of a JJ or something. It's not, this just doesn't work for me. Here are other words I like being called. I do like being called daddy if I've given you permission ahead of time. I have some partners who do get to call me that, but not everybody does. I like being called ma'am. I don't like being called goddess. Anything kind of religious like that is not a thing for me. These are my no zones. I don't like being choked. And I don't particularly like anal penetration. This is my STI status. It's been a minute since I've been tested. I was tested in August and I was negative for everything. My partner does have herpes, although he's never had an outbreak. But if herpes freaks you out, it's probably not a good idea to sleep with me. This is my relationship status. I am in an open relationship with a cisgender man. I have a girlfriend and a boyfriend as well. Here is a turn on. What's today's turn on? Today's turn on, I really like ear kissing and earlobe tugging. Turn off, like I said, probably like choking. Do not like choking. Anything else? No, feeling pretty good. Thanks. This might be something also you want to add into it, COVID precautions or COVID rules for how you're interacting with people, just to add to that list, right? If you're potted up with some people, or if you haven't been vaccinated or can't be vaccinated, like this might be good information. Again, this is just stuff that you want to share with people so that they can win with you, and then they can make their informed decisions about how they want to interact with you. Right. And this is also true for STI protocol stuff, right? There's so many ways to interact with people. For instance, if you are like, if you have HPV and your partner doesn't really understand how HPV works, you might decide not to have PV sex or, penetrative sex, but you can have a lot of other kinds of sex. But the only way you can start having that conversation is if you're upfront with people about what you need to feel safe and good. So just think about that. So yeah, this is it. So write this stuff down, have this stuff in your back pocket, get really good at it. I also have another model that I can send you to online. My partner has a website called Read About Sex. It's REID, about sex, his name is Reed. So readaboutsex.com/elevator. And it's his safer sex elevator speech. It goes into a little bit more detail about when you were last tested, what you were tested for, and safer sex protocols. It's great if you are engaging with sex with a lot of different people, or for the first time after you've been maybe in a long-term monogamous relationship and you're just starting to have sex with more than one person. The elevator speech can really help. But it also is great stuff to offer for people that you've been in relationships with for a long time. Sometimes you start taking things for granted and you don't have these conversations. So maybe break the stuff out and kind of answer these questions together and learn something about your partners. Cool. All right. One of the things that I also want to talk about in kind of relating to U101 is this concept of sexual resiliency. Resiliency is a concept in psychology that basically explains how well you handle adversity, setbacks, difficult moments in your life. Sexual resiliency is how we handle those things in the bedroom, right? And I think it's something that we can all learn to be better at, because sex is so loaded in our culture that it's really easy for small things that wouldn't bother us in non-sexual scenarios to bother us a lot in sexual scenarios. Things like microaggressions, things like maybe just comments about our bodies. Learning to develop sexual resiliency can help just foster a more positive outlook towards having sex and feeling safer engaging with sex with a lot of different people. And I'm going to talk a little bit about different ways that we can do that. The first one is to cultivate flexibility. Rigid things break easily. I don't mean not having boundaries. Actually, strong boundaries are flexible boundaries where you can make exceptions or you can adjust as the circumstances change. Let's see. I feel like I have an example that I want to share with you so you can understand what I mean. So I was engaging in a really hot and heavy kind of text flirtation with somebody a couple years ago. And we were going to have our first like in-person date. And up until this point, most of our interactions had been solely on text. And it was really exciting because he had a lot of kinks that were interesting to me, but I had not ever explored. And while we were sexting one night, we were being really sexy and hot and heavy and flirty. He shared a kink with me that I had an immediate visceral reaction to. Like I got squicked out, like, ooh, like tense, like, ooh, that's not a turn on at all. And I had a moment of like, oh, I just had an emotional reaction to that. And what I had to do was kind of take a breath, take a moment, realize that he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't violate a boundary that I had stated or intentionally hurt me. He just shared something that he liked that really bugged me. And so I had to say, hey, babe, just so you know, what you shared is a hard boundary for me. It's a hard no. And I don't like thinking about it and I don't like talking about it. And he said, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, that's fine. I'm not mad. I just want to let you know, like, please don't bring it up in our sexy times again. And he said, okay. And then we kind of like had a little bit of like he was a little bit embarrassed and a little bit ashamed. And I totally understood. And I did my best to kind of let him know that he wasn't a bad person. He didn't do anything wrong. And then we kind of ended it for the night. And then the next day I let him know, like, hey, thank you so much for reaching out again. I'm fine. We're good. I still find you sexy as hell. I still want to see you when we hang out. This is just a boundary for me. That's what I mean by developing flexibility. If I had taken that thing that he shared with me and made it mean something about who he was as a person or the kind of relationship we could have, I may have missed out on a really lovely opportunity to have a really great time with him. So to the degree we can develop flexibility to know that not everyone's desires and boundaries are going to be the same as ours. And we have to find that middle ground. What we're looking for is the win-win, right? Where we both are going to win together. So that's what we want to do when we cultivate flexibility that helps our sexual resiliency. Also, educate yourself. Again, that earlier comment about STIs was such a great example of this. If you are afraid of something that you don't quite understand, take it upon yourself to educate yourself, right? To do some research. If somebody has a kink that you're not into, or it has an STI that you're not quite sure how to navigate around and consider, educate yourself to the degree you can. You can sometimes ask that person to elucidate for you, but I also think it's helpful to take a step back and do a little bit more research, the whole, like, Google it before you give it to somebody else as a thing that they need to educate you on. For instance, if you're afraid of herpes and you don't quite understand how it's transmitted or what the actual effects are on someone's body, Google it, research it, and learn from good resources about it so that you can choose into the relationship you want to have with someone if they are herpes positive. And that's great. Just doing that information, giving that information will often help calm your fears down a lot. It'll help you feel better about things. So take the time to educate yourself. And also develop some self-awareness. There's a concept in psychology called an internal versus external processing. And that means how you process information. Some people who are external processors like to talk a lot until they come to some sort of conclusion, right? You may have been in a relationship with someone like this, or you are that person where you're not quite sure. You want to figure out the solution by verbalizing it. Some people are internal processors. They want to kind of separate away, think, feel, and then come to a conclusion. Knowing this about yourself is great because, again, that can help you be like, hey, you just gave me information that was new to me. I'm going to need to take a moment and step away and just think about it before I come to you with an answer. And if you can share that with people, it helps often make them feel like you're not withdrawing because you now suddenly hate them, right? So be clear about that. And then again, just cultivate curiosity and about yourself, about other people. Be a person who loves getting new information because it gives you more ways to interact with people. Diversify your self-care options. If you feel like you only have one way of feeling better about things, if things go sideways, I encourage you to consider more options. And surround yourself with resilient people, and that will help you for a lifetime. Oh my gosh, that's all so much. But we don't have a whole lot of time, so I'm going to press onward. Again, if you need to take care of your bio needs, please do. If you have questions that are coming up, please add them. I will address them all. But I want to move out onto getting out there and actually like finding people and meeting people and doing things. So let's do that. Okay, getting out there. So the biggest thing I can offer, and this is some basic bitch advice, but bear with me here. The best thing you can do is have a life that you are enthusiastic about and you feel fulfilled by. Because being fulfilled and having a life that you're enthusiastic about is an incredibly attractive thing. Now, this is difficult advice while we are all experiencing a global pandemic, and a lot of times we are not able to stay out as late as we want to, or we are not able to go to all the venues and have all the fun time. And I get it, that's real. But at the same time, I still encourage you to get out and do things around other people. A lot of us have a lot of hobbies now that are very online, right? Like might be playing World of Warcraft or having, doing coding or things that are just very basically inside the house. But to the degree you can start to externalize those things, that will really help. If you knit, try and go to a knitting circle. If you read, join a book club, that kind of stuff. Try to meet other people and be honest with those people about what you're looking for. Oftentimes the best relationships and the best hookups come from recommendations from friends. So if you're like, hey, I am newly single after a 45-year marriage, and I would really like some help finding some eligible humans to fool around with, to see what all the kids are up to these days, right? To basically enlist accomplices, to basically give your friends permission to help you find sexy friends. And again, if you have hobbies, to try and find hobbies that you can take out into the world. Go to hiking clubs, do outdoorsy things, go to cooking classes, stuff where you're interacting with other people. Of course, online dating is a very real thing, but if you're having a conversation with somebody online about dating, and they ask you what your hobbies are, it's really helpful to have things that you do out in the world. It makes you a more attractive person. And it also tends to attract people to you. If you are living a fulfilled life, that is a very attractive quality. This is something I get a lot from people who are saving some of the things that they want to do for when they find their person, right? Like, I've always wanted to go to Italy, but I only want to go to Italy with my romantic partner. Well, why not go to Italy on a single trip and meet other people who are single who also want to go to Italy, right? There is a way to live the life that you want to live, which makes you far more attractive as a person. So I know it sounds basic, bitch, but this is the advice that I have found to work consistently, far more so than anything about, again, tricking people into wanting to sleep with you or casting a huge net. Live the life you want to live and find that people tend to be attracted to you. There's also a kind of quality that I would like to talk about called hunters and broadcasters. This is also something I talk about more in Girl Sex 101. But some people in my mind are hunters. So they are people who like to collect people. They're the person at the club who's going up to people and being like, I like your style, what's your deal? And kind of they're extroverted and they like to find interesting people and collect them and then bring them into the fold, right? They're people. And then there are broadcasters. There are people who like hang back, but are very self-expressed within themselves. They might have very specific fashion choices or very interesting hobbies, or lead a life that is very, in agreement, right? They have a real sense of who they are, and they're constantly broadcasting who they are to the world. Knowing a little bit about what kind of person you are is really helpful, because then you can start to cultivate more of the other kind and find a little bit more balance. For instance, if you're a broadcaster like me, if you tend to hang back and be a little bit shy and insecure, being willing to make that one connection with somebody who's like, hey, I like your shirt, where did you get it? Is actually really useful. And then if you are a hunter, it might be helpful for you also to broadcast a little bit, to figure out what about that person is so interesting to you. And maybe you can find some integrity, some resonance there for yourself as well. When it comes to meeting people, curiosity cannot be overstated. Curiosity is the best virtue I found for finding people to sleep with and to finding people to date. Breaking the ice is one of the scariest things for people. Flirting can be super scary, but really all that flirting is getting to know someone and being playful at the same time. That's really it. So ask questions to which there is not a right or wrong answer. And don't be afraid to give just a really simple, basic compliment to just kind of open the conversation. This is, again, very basic stuff, but a lot of us forget this. Again, for me as a queer woman, very few people teach young women how to hit on people, right? It's not a rite of passage that we get, like sometimes it's taught to young men. So for a lot of queer women, we're just basically a middle school dance all the time. We're all just kind of hanging out at the place and no one's asking the other one to dance. So we have to learn how to do it. So to the degree you can, just start simple, open up the floor for a conversation. If you are at a sports bar, ask them who they're rooting for, right? Anything that strikes your curiosity, lead with that. If you tend to be a particularly awkward person, again, I come across very, put together, but I am often very awkward. I say a weird thing that nobody gets, or I make a reference that no one understands and I feel stupid and then I retreat, right? It happens to a lot of us. If you're one of those people, just focus on improving some sort of basic communication skills. If you have a hard time maintaining eye contact, for instance, practice making, non-threatening eye contact by looking and then looking away, but then looking again. And practice active listening. Really listen to not only the words that someone's sharing, but also the energy behind those words, how much they are leaning in or leaning back, paying attention to body language. These things can help you so much in navigating all of this stuff. And then also establishes you as a safe person for other people to hang out with. So again, like if you are one of those people who you may start flirting with somebody, but they're like not available, but if they think that, hey, this person's actually pretty cute and they seem like they're a nice person, they might recommend a friend. And that's really where these things start getting really good. So much. Okay, I'm gonna bring this in for a little bit of a landing, but then we're gonna have time for questions. So again, if you have questions, I will totally address them. So when it comes to finding other people, we have this diagram that's used a lot in sex ed. My partner Reed and I came up with it in a class specifically around non-monogamy, but I think it applies to people of all different relationship status. Again, this is just a big fill in the blank thing. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples around it. This is an exercise that you do for yourself, and brutal honesty is key. It's okay if you have things that you want from partner or partners that are not PC. It's okay if you have things that make you feel kind of weird when you write them down, but this is what we're looking for. This is where you start to get really clear on who you're looking for in terms of your sex time. And this is also, again, if you're using apps to date, this is where it becomes really useful to see this stuff. Because a lot of times in those apps, you're actually like listing like stuff that either filters those people, right? And sometimes it can be absurdly arbitrary, like height. And sometimes it can be like, do I want to date somebody who is really religious or not, right? To get really clear on this for yourself. So win-wins are things that if they have them, you're all happy, right? This could be they're a dog lover or that they're a vegan, right? They like thrill you, that these are things that fit. Wiggle room are things that don't thrill you, but you're okay with. It's not a deal breaker, but it's not also a win. 3 strikes is a unique one. 3 strikes is basically something that doesn't work for you, but if they're actively working on it, it's okay. So for instance, the example we always use is smoking cigarettes. If you are somebody who does not want to date a smoker, but you are looking at people and they are if you're interested in someone and they're actively trying to quit, that might go into 3 strikes, right? It's but basically it's something that like you're willing to hang with for a little while, but at some point will be a problem. So just to think about that, there might be some 3 strikes for you. And then deal breakers, things that if they have them or possess them, you're not interested. And that's, again, this can be totally un-PC. It can be like if somebody has kids, you're not interested, right? Be honest with yourself. This is why I tell you to do this stuff. Like you can throw away this piece of paper afterwards, but I want you to get crystal clear. And if you write something down in any of the columns that kind of is like, feels weird, this might be an opportunity for you to investigate. If you're thinking like, I can't date somebody who, isn't a citizen of the country that I live in, right? You can, if that feels weird to you when you write that down, maybe give yourself some time to think about what stereotypes am I using right now? Is it that I'm afraid that they won't be able to stay here for very long? Or is it, that I'm afraid that we don't share enough culture? You can start thinking about that, right? And maybe that might move from a deal breaker to a wiggle room when you've done a little bit more work on that. The more clear you can get on this, the better off you will be, because again, we're looking to filter all of the humanity out there into people who work for us. And again, they could work for us for a night, for a couple of nights, for a short-term relationship, or for a lifetime, right? And it depends on what you're looking for. So this could also be you might have a deal breaker for somebody who's looking to get married in the next year, or that might be a win-win depending on who you are and what you're looking for. So think about that, right? Non-monogamous people might be either a deal breaker or a win-win or a wiggle room. Put those in those columns because that will be helpful for you to build your own profile about what you're looking for in this world. Okay, it's a lot. And I have one more slide that we will that I'll go through, and this is around communication during sex. And all of the stuff that we've used up until this point is going to feed into this. And then I will open the floor up to more questions. Okay. So check-ins. Whoop, there it is, check-ins. All right. Check-ins are all about asking good questions. During sex, check-ins happen before, during, and after sex. During sex, I encourage you to ask high quality questions to get high quality answers. One of the examples I use in all of the classes I teach is how often it is that one will ask during sex, is this okay? Is this okay is like the, how are you? I'm fine of sex. It doesn't really give you any answers, any useful feedback whatsoever. So I encourage you to upgrade your questions. Ask either or questions, faster, slower, more lube, less lube, keep doing this, change to something else. And yes, no questions. For people who, like me, who can get a little pre-verbal during sex, the more you can ask questions that are very simple to answer with either like a head nod or a shake can be really useful. I encourage you to, during sex, look for things like eye contact, look for things like body language to really make sure that you're on the same page. If you feel like you're slipping off the same page with somebody, there's never a problem with timing out, checking in, and then getting a sense of where they are. Because if the moment was supposed to happen, the moment can happen again. But the last thing we want to do is to cause harm by continuing to do something when somebody's checked out emotionally or even physically, right? So the degree that we can find as soon as we start to notice something feels weird, to pause, check in, and that's really key. Now, on the receiving side of this stuff, there's an exercise that I want you to do right now with me. It's very simple. But it's called embodied yes and embodied no. Again, this is something I talk a lot more in depth about in Getting It, which you can't see right now because I'm sharing my slide, but Getting It. And because the slides are over, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay, here I am. Hello again. So this is the embodied yes and embodied no exercise. So I'm going to say some things, and all you have to do is to say them back in your head. You can say them back out loud and feel in your body what it feels like to say or think that sentence. Okay. And just notice it. So I'm going to give you a couple ones. Okay. Ready? Just repeat it back either out loud or in your head, stay on mute, and just feel in your body. I hate dogs. I love eating meat. I love sucking cock. Pain arouses me. I want to get fucked in the ass. I love my body. Okay, so you may have noticed that some of those sentences were designed to elicit either a strong yes or a strong no response. It's okay if you didn't have a strong one for all of these, but some of them you probably did. Some of them may have just not felt true. You may have felt like you were lying. Some of them may have felt 100% true. You're like, yes, absolutely. This is so obvious, right? This information is gold because this is what we get to when it comes to embodied yes and embodied no. And this is where communicating during sex is key. To know what a yes feels like and what a no feels like in your body is so useful to know whether or not something feels like you want to continue doing it or not. So when somebody says, do you want me to put a finger inside your ass? You can feel how that question feels to your body and know whether or not it's a yes or a no. And sometimes you might have an ambiguous response and you can decide in the moment, do I trust this person well enough or do I want to try something? Or maybe a maybe in that case might be just a no for your own sense of safety. But the better you can get at on the fly, feeling in your body what the answer is, this is so useful just outside of sex. for all sorts of things, to know whether something feels like something you want to do or not. I encourage you to practice this exercise a lot with all sorts of things, because it will help. We're running out of time. I had a couple more exercises, but I'm going to, again, just direct you to getting it. There are all these exercises in there. All of these fill in the blanks are in there. So it's really good. So what I would like to do now is to address any of the questions that didn't get answered during this session so far. So I'm going to go back through the chat. If you have things you want to add, questions or even comments, things that you think that would be useful to share to the group, again, aha moments would be really helpful. So sharing anything that feels good. I'll read through some of our last moments while I'm looking through these questions. So feel free to add to the chat. Okay. Private question. The only problem with great sex and hookups is that it makes it very difficult to accept that a formal partner that is not good in bed can fulfill your sex life. That's a really interesting question. So the way I'm interpreting this, and I could be wrong, but it basically feels like if you've had great sex with people who are not your primary partner or not your relationship, and your primary partner or your relationship is not giving you great sex, there's a concern that you will never have great sex with that primary partner. My personal philosophy is that sex is a skill that almost anyone can learn. I think that there's a lot that goes into it. I think learning to listen to another person's body, learning different sexual techniques, learning about sexual anatomy are all things that someone can learn how to do. The one thing is that it requires that person to want to learn how to do it. So I cannot tell you that this person will always will be able to get better, because if they don't want to get better at touching your body, then there's not much I can do there. But yes, absolutely. I believe that everyone can learn to touch and be touched and become better lovers. This is why I am in the industry that I am. There's so many resources out there. BraTopia is teaching a bunch of workshops on it. So I encourage you to help your partner get to a place where you feel good. I also feel like if you are kind of like the conversation we had at the very top around intimacy and vulnerability, talking to your partner about what you want and need is going to be the first step to making sure that they're fulfilling you. But again, if non-monogamy is an option, there's nothing wrong with the fact that you get certain needs met by certain people. I know people who are in non-monogamous relationships specifically because they like a certain kind of sex that their primary partner does not want to or cannot fulfill for them. So there's an opportunity for people who have the facility with open relationships to look for different kinds of sex from different partners. Again, my primary partner and I do not have kinky sex. We are a very vanilla couple, but I do have some kinks and some interests. I get those things met by other partners because I have the privilege of having that kind of relationship. If you are in a monogamous relationship, have those conversations about where you want to try and learn to be better for lovers for one another. And again, this is kind of comes back to the win-wins and deal breakers. You might find that there's stuff in there that's really useful. All right, this is like the lightning round. Okay. I saw a question about having sex. I want to make sure I get it right. A person who's having casual sex, who is concerned about how to groom their genitals. Question about that I feel awkward about asking. When I start having sex again, what should I be completely waxed in my genital area? Not unless you want to be. Personal choices around personal sexual grooming is 100% the choice that you make for your own body. It is your body. So if it feels really fun for you to get all fully waxed and clean, that's great. If it doesn't, that's great too. There is the stereotype now that because so much porn has fully waxed, vulvas, that this idea that everyone should look like that. That is not true. A lot of people actually really enjoy pubic hair. So again, this is about what makes you feel sexy and good in your own body. First, like if you look in the mirror and you like the way your vulva or penis looks, great. If you want to change something about it, great. But the first step is to feel sexually good about yourself, feeling sexy in your own body before anyone else I think it's to have an opinion about it. And again, you want to have sex with high quality folks that are cool with whatever, but are also happy to play. I think so many of us are in a place now where we are just grateful to have anyone who wants to have sex with us, right? It's what a privilege it is to be able to be face down in somebody's genitals that you think is really cool, right? So finding people who have that sense of gratitude and enthusiasm about you and your body, those are the people that you want to be having sex with. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. We're gonna wrap it up in just a couple minutes. When there's a lot of chemistry and great sex with the other side being a hookup, is it hard to not develop further feelings? Can this lead to confusion? What's the mindset to keep when you start this type of relationship? Oh my gosh, that's so huge. I will try my best, but yes, catching feels, it's super common. It happens to a lot of us. I think the best way to approach it is to know yourself. Are you the kind of person for whom certain sex acts trigger this like, oh my gosh, response, I'm in love with you, right? Some of us, if we haven't gotten a lot of great sex in the past, the first person who like rocks our world, we might think we're in love with, right? I know this happens for a lot of people when they have their first orgasm with a partner, they're like, I must be in love. It's like, no, you just had an orgasm, congratulations, right? So it's common for this to happen. Being honest with yourself about what you're looking for, all the stuff we already did, what you're looking for and who you are as a person. If there are certain sex acts that trigger that, if there are certain kinds of people that trigger that, if you start noticing you're in this like fantasy realm, that's really good information. I will actually mention that my partner, again, read about sex.com. He is teaching an online workshop right now about attachment and about how people can get attached, overly attached, and how to know about yourself, how your attachment theory affects your ability to have a slutty sex life if you want to be slutty, right? So you can check him out at readoubtsex.com because you can get some really good information there. But yes, it is common, but it doesn't happen to everybody. So know who you are, know what your triggers are. If you are a person who tends to get overly attached, I encourage you to keep sleeping with other people and to diversify your options. Because sometimes we will often try and boyfriend or girlfriend people that we have sex with because we're not getting a lot of our other needs met. And that's where we kind of start to bond, right? So I encourage you to continue to have friendships, continue to see other people, again, diversify. Like if you have a partner that you do kinky stuff with, you have a partner that you do vanilla stuff with, if you have a partner that you go to sex parties with, have different people that fulfill these different needs, and then will keep you from necessarily pair bonding in a way that doesn't feel good to you. That's just scratching the surface. Again, check out my book if you have any other questions. And thank you for BraTopia for mentioning that my books are carried by Indigo in chapters, which is awesome. Oh my gosh, so much. We are 5 minutes over. If you have other questions that are lingering, I encourage you to reach out to me. You can email me at info@girlsex101.com. That's also where you can find my books. You can find more about me. You can see the social media links. So if you want to follow me and see other workshops and stuff, that's the place to do it. In the meantime, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being so honest with yourselves and each other and being vulnerable. This is 100% the skill set that will help you have a more fulfilling sex life. So congratulations for showing up and for doing these exercises and for learning more about yourself and others. It's wonderful and I'm so proud of you. And thank you to BraTopia for hosting me. This was a lot of fun and I'm so glad that I got to meet your followers and cool folks and meet all of you. And I'm hoping that we will be able to do it someday in a future where we will be able to touch each other's faces and stuff, and it'll be wonderful. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Allison. I know we've also tried to get Reed up to Canada too, and every time we've tried either of you, it's something. So it'll happen one day, guaranteed. So no, thanks so much for tonight. That was absolutely amazing. And for everyone that was here or has already left, we will email out everything that Allison's given us permission to share, as well as we have a discount code for our French postcard website. It has some super fun lingerie and toys on it, spice things up that way. And we will follow everything up with one last email so you didn't miss out on anything. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.